Some were good, some were not so good. Now, in my life, for example, I was blessed with a lot of the good things that happened, okay? Schools were fine. We got more money to some of these schools. We got the books. We didn't get the books that were left over. I was actually using school books that had been written in my lifetime for a change, instead of what was left over from when the white high schools were done and they got new books. So I got all of that. The Harvard Law School, Princeton, and everything. I'd like to feel like I worked hard and did a good job, but I'm sure I was a beneficiary of affirmative action. I'm not going to stand here and lie to you. And so it was a great opportunity for me to have a chance to go to those schools. And the jobs that I've had since, almost everything that's happened to me in my adult life could never have happened to my parents. Not because they were lazy, not because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. On the contrary, they worked hard, they went to school, they raised their kids, they went to church, they did everything you're supposed to do, but those doors were not open to them. They just weren't there. And then for me, I was young enough, I was, kind of young enough so I could benefit from that, but I wasn't old enough so that I was always the first one doing something. Because when you break through the glass ceiling, you get cut sometimes, right? I never got cut because I was always behind somebody else that did it. I mean, even right now. I'm the third African-American state's attorney, right? Because we had Jack Johnson and, Alex Williams. People have done these things already. When I worked in the Senate, when I worked at the Department of Justice, all of those jobs, there was somebody who blazed a trail for me. When I got to Princeton and Harvard, it was isolating and everything, but people had already come and set up a black student union. So those things were already in place for me. People had already paved the way. And then Prince George's County is, to some extent, the story of those of us who benefited from that movement. You go to the gated communities at Woodmore and all of that. Those are people who benefited from this movement. But it's a tale of two cities. So there's another side of this too. And you don't have to leave Prince George's County to find it, right? So we had another year. I think we had 145 homicides last year in Prince George's County. D.C. had 170. Baltimore had 275, right? And this isn't the Klan rolling in, killing black folks. This is fratricide. This is black male killing black male, right? And this is 14-year-old girls pushing that baby stroller. And no, that's not little sister. That's her child. And this is schools where you go visit, and there are more kids in the hallway than in the classroom sometimes. Right? Or walking around on the street. We're in an area where, we led auto thefts a couple of years ago. We had 18,000 cars stolen in Prince George's County. Those weren't people coming into the county to steal cars. That's homegrown talent. Right here in Prince George's County, making us the leader in the state in stolen cars. What's going on? How did we hit this fork in the road where we're having these two sorts of dynamics? And by the way, the fork where the negative things are happening is starting to bleed over into the fork where the positive things are happening too. So I've got kids now, right? Living in those 5-bedroom houses, the 3-car garages, the two, master's degree parents, right? Good schools, going to church, doing all the stuff they're supposed to be doing, stealing cars, carrying guns, skipping school, dealing drugs, not because they need to, because, we talk about, the economic pressures to get involved in these things. These kids aren't doing it because they need the money. It's about peer pressure and the definition of what it means to be an African-American man. And somewhere along the line, that culture struggle shifted over. And the whole gangster vision and all of that stuff became a dominant force for our young people. Now, how did we get there? Because you know what? They weren't born thinking that. All right, so what I want to do for just a minute, because I know a lot of times when parents get together and we start talking about, man, these kids today, what's going on, these young boys out of control, blah, blah, blah. Well, where do you think they got it from? It came from us. Let's do a quick history. Go back with me to the 60s, right? And we had all these things going on, and there were some positive things with it. Dr. King, remember that? It wasn't just Dr. King. Remember the whole Malcolm X wing of the movement? Remember that? Malcolm was dead before I really knew what was going on, and he was one of those guys my parents only spoke about in whispered tones, And so when I got the autobiography and started reading that in middle school, Mom was concerned. She's like, boy, what you reading about Malcolm X for? You know, he wasn't even a Christian, you know. What you reading about him for? Well, you know, it's an interesting story, right? It's all-American in some levels and engaging because he's a guy who made a difference in our community. And I could see how there was sort of a manliness to it, right? Malcolm stood up. He wouldn't take nothing from nobody, by any means necessary, right? Posing by the window with the machine gun in his hand. Remember that one? Yeah, everybody's seen that photo, right? Well, out of that, you got the Black Panthers, right? And what were the Black Panthers doing? You remember when they surrounded the California State Legislature building? There's brothers standing around the whole building holding guns. Remember that photo? That was a powerful moment. But there are two images that came out of that, right? Yes, we're black men, we're not gonna take it anymore. You've been beating us down, calling us boy, treating us like dirt. White folks could slap us around and stuff. We ain't putting up with that anymore. Good message. Bad message, you look at some of the gangster stuff right now, it looks exactly like that. If you trace it back, it looks exactly like that. And you can see the intermediate steps all the way. Remember Shaft and Superfly? Now I remember at the time, it's like, wow, we got a movie where the brother doesn't die, man. Remember? Seemed like, you know, you got Dirty Dozen or something, and Jim Brown's in the movie. Now that's a strong black man, but he died. You know, so you watching the movie, it's like, well, the black guy always dies, man. You know, it's just a question of when. At least Jim made it to the end of the movie. Well, now there's Shaft and Superfly, right? Shaft walks off, you know, he's rescued the girl, he got paid, you know, he's got the girlfriends all over the place, he's got the cool leather jacket. Remember, y'all old enough to remember, everybody had to have one of them leather jackets, right? Well, it was funny because I was like 12 or 13, so I went and I trying to pick one out, and my mom was like, I ain't spending all that money on you. So that's when, for those of y'all that don't know, have you heard the term pleather? All right, that's when it started. That's what I had, that's what I wore, but I looked just as clean as Richard Roundtree in the real thing, right? And then came Superfly. Now it's funny because my parents didn't allow me to see Superfly, so I just saw Superfly like a year or two ago, okay? And my wife came downstairs and said, what in the world are you watching? Because she hadn't seen it either. But for me, I realized, actually, as I watched it, I was like, this is what we're dealing with right now. For those of you that don't know, Superfly was a drug dealer, okay? And the point of the movie was, the political angle of the movie, the how do we make this cool that we're sort of elevating a drug dealer, was because the boss over him was a white guy, right? And the end of the movie, I know y'all won't be heartbroken if I tell you how it ends, right? Was that Superfly gets the drugs, he gets the money, he drives off in his Cadillac. I can't remember if he killed the white boss or not, but he beat him, right? Sounds a lot like a little, you know, American Gangster up there, doesn't it? Kind of similar. So you look at those two movies and the stuff that came with it. Think about the music at the time.